Welcome back, everybody, to our EIT Health Catapult Medtech semi-finals. Let's remember that at 15:10 Central European Time, there will be a networking session, which of course is a fantastic opportunity to schedule those one-to-one meetings so that you are able to meet with, discuss, and matchmake with the brightest minds today in medtech in Europe. But before that, we're going to run into our fourth and final pitch sequence with the last three top medtechs in Europe today who are taking part in Catapult. And we are going to start with France. And we are going to now meet Fabrice Faublanc, the co-founder of Orixa startup with Fabrice. So please, Fabrice, the floor is yours for 5 minutes of pitching. Have a great time.
Thank you, Alison. I'm delighted to be here and to tell you about Orixa. At Orixa, we are building a unique liquid ventilation platform to save patient lives in critical care. And we're starting by addressing a major unmet medical need, which is cardiac arrest. Today, unfortunately, you have less than 10% chances to recover from out-of-hospital cardiac arrest. Indeed, in spite of innovations such as automated CPR and investments in defibrillators and efforts by rescuers, 2/3 of patients who are initially rescued by emergency services die in the hospital within a few days. They die from the post-cardiac arrest cytokine storm that destroys the heart and the brain cells, provoking a secondary death. Therefore, we need to strengthen this weak link by tackling post-cardiac arrest syndrome, and that's what we're doing at Orixa. Every year, post-cardiac arrest syndrome kills more than 150,000 patients in Europe and North America because current cooling devices take too long to induce protective therapeutic hypothermia, which is defined by a temperature of 33 degrees Celsius. So it's high time for a new ultra-rapid hypothermia standard for cardiac arrest care in the ICU. It's called Venticool, liquid ventilation for cooling within minutes, not hours, the blood, the heart, and the brain to stop the cytokine storm in its tracks. So, how does it work? To achieve such cooling speed, Venticool uses the best thermal exchangers, the lungs, as it ventilates the intubated patient with a thermoregulated breathable liquid. At each ventilation cycle, for 2 seconds during inspiration, Venticool pushes 1 liter of cold and oxygenated liquid in the lungs of the patient. Then, during expiration, for 8 seconds, it will suck up the same amount of liquid that became warm and rich of CO2 in the lungs. So during every 10-second cycles, Venticool removes up to 2 kilojoules of heat from the patient body. And as you can see on this graph, this unique cooling power is critical to act during the 2 hours therapeutic window of opportunity, a window which is completely missed by standard cooling devices. So that's why only ultra-rapid hypothermia can put the brakes on the post-cardiac arrest cytokine storm and protect the heart and brain from failing. Based on our animal models and input from KOLs, we expect for patients that can be treated within 2 hours of resuscitation, that survival rate would go up to 50% versus 35% currently. That would translate into many saved lives. We expect that once we clear reimbursement hurdles and we have Venticool in most ICUs in Europe and North America from 2030, that close to a third of the 220,000 patients who are rushed alive in the ICU will be put on Venticool. That's 65,000 patients per year, which would translate into roughly 10,000 saved lives and Venticool revenues of more than 300 million euros for Orixa. To get there, we have already achieved preclinical and industrial proof of concept on the Venticool technology. The next 2 challenges are first to obtain CE mark by end of 2024, and then to include Venticool in the international cardiac arrest guidelines through a successful pan-European superiority study. And this plus FDA approval will lead to a full-scale launch in 2027. To finance this development effort, we're looking for a Series A of 15 million euro to complement the 6 million euros raised to date. Orixa is powered by its team of co-founders, engineers in Sherbrooke, Canada for technology, and pharmacologists in Paris for preclinical development, and an operations team in Lyon that I'm leading. We have the full support of leading clinicians in the field, such as Alain Cariou and Fabio Tacon. And we also rely on the expertise of our partners, industrial partners, who've invested in our recent seed round last summer. In conclusion, I'd like to point out that our mission to bring liquid ventilation's clinical benefits to critical care is served by a strategy to develop high-impact solutions with, first of all, Venticool as the reference treatment for post-cardiac arrest syndrome, and then subsequently Vent2Breathe for respiratory distress support as an alternative to mechanical ventilation. And we're confident that with the support of the EIT health community, we can build here in Europe the leader in liquid ventilation to save critical care patients. Thank you for your attention. I'll be very happy to take your questions.
Thank you very much indeed, Fabrice. Great pitch. Thank you. Let's now bring in our jury to take their questions. Who would like to begin? Danielle, perhaps, or Claudio, Simon? Who would like to have a go? Daniel.
Yeah, happy to.
Okay, great.
So yeah, we'd love to just hear a little bit about
Aiden.
the IP side of things. Could you tell us what's kind of the protective nature right now, and why could no one else copy this?
Okay, thank you for the question, Daniel. We have 3 patents, 2 of them which were filed in the academic setting and for which Orixa has an exclusive worldwide license, and the most recent patent that we filed in 2021, so earlier this year, which belongs 100% to Orixa. The first one covers a method to have a proxy of the temperature in the body through our device. The second one protects the what we call the lung conservative liquid ventilation parameters, so that we cannot have any side effects in terms of lung volume control. And the third one, which is our own Orixa patent, covers the core technology which is inside the machine to optimize the exchanges in gas and in thermal power.
Thank you. Simon, I believe you had a question. Oh, Daniel.
Okay, thank you. Can you describe what is the level of education of the market in terms of the need for such a solution? Are people aware of it? Customers aware of it? Or is the clinical, profession willing to jump on such a solution?
Yes, we're a few years away from a full launch, as you understood, but my co-founders have made more than 50 publications on the topic of liquid ventilation. They've done presentation at the American Heart Association meeting. So there's a bit of a buzz for some KOLs on this topic. That's why Professor Cariou at Cochin or Professor Tacon at Erasmus in Brussels are really behind us. Obviously, it's not widely known now, and for most people, it's a bit of a science fiction technology to have someone breathing a liquid. But obviously, with the first-in-man study that will be coming up in 2023 and subsequent publications and talks in the congresses by our KOLs, obviously we will educate the people in the ICUs who deal with cardiac arrest.
I think, Simon, over to you.
Thanks. I guess to understand a little bit, how much evidence will you actually need to generate, and kind of when will you become, do you consider, standard of care? What will be the critical factor that really kind of gets nudged to say, yes, okay, I'm convinced by this?
Mm-hmm. Thanks for a great question. The first step, obviously, is to demonstrate with the first-in-man study the performance and the safety. So that's going to be about 30 patients in those 2 centers I mentioned in Erasmus in Brussels and in Cochin in Paris. And then after that, from 2024 to 2026, we will set up a multicentric clinical study versus the reference treatment which currently is TTM, so temperature management at 36 degrees, sorry. And then we need to demonstrate superiority on the main outcome, which is survival with good neurological condition. And this is where the plus 15% in absolute value will need to be demonstrated.
And for your US strategy, I guess, will you be conducting some of those clinical trials in the US in the US as well?
Yes, we will. Obviously, we will discuss with the FDA to hopefully get a breakthrough status and be able to reach the US market as quickly as possible. We will start the discussions once we have done our first patients in Europe to come to the FDA with evidence that the safety and the performance is already well established, and it will be a parallel track. We at this stage we think the big superiority study will be done in Europe. And we'll have the FDA study, probably 80 to 100 patients. That's what our advisors are telling us, to be held in parallel in the US.
Got it. Thank you.
Aidan, quickly, yeah, go ahead, very quick.
Question, regarding the business model and the cost of application. Hyperthermia is a quite established methodology, but cost of your application and business model. Thank you.
Yes. So the business model relies mainly on selling the sterile consumable kit, which includes a patient kit and the breathable liquid. And
we are running over time, Fabrice.
Based on the evidence, it should range around 10,000 euros per patient for this. Based on the life we save and the quality study that we've performed to date.
Thank you very much. We have to wrap up there because of the timing. Thank you for such a rich discussion, Fabrice and the jury. Now we're going to move to Sweden. We're going to meet Michael Atkinson. Michael is the CEO and board member of the company Medvask. Here we are. Good afternoon, Michael. Nice to meet you.
Alison. Thank you for inviting me.
And you have now 5 minutes to pitch. Have a great time.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. May I present our solution? My name is Michael Atkinson, and I am the inventor. Combining our anesthetic catheter solution with today's recommended thermal treatment for varicose veins will resolve an unmet pain and resource-demanding problem. What do 1/3 of you have in common with celebrities like Britney Spears and Angelina Jolie? Probably varicose veins. Varicose veins affect 1/3 of the adult population. It starts as a cosmetic problem to the left, and then it builds up over time, and it can end up with a chronic leg ulcer. Early treatment will diminish this risk. Today's terminal treatment technique can require up to 30 injections to deliver the anesthetic tumescent fluid. The tumescent fluid reduces the heat and the pain sensation from the laser. It isolates the surrounding tissue from the heat, and it compresses the vessel against the laser fiber for better efficiency. The treating physician has to deliver the tumescent by puncturing with one hand, while he is guiding the puncture needle with ultrasound in the other one. This is a challenging and time-consuming technique, leaving an hour for treatment and involving a number of staff for monitoring the patient. This is why we developed the solution catheter. This is practically a pain-free delivery technique for the anesthetic tumescent. IP rights exist for the technique in the major markets. Using Solutio, only one puncture of the skin with no or minimal pain will be needed. The Solutio catheter will deliver the tumescent from inside a vessel to the exact spot of use. This will facilitate and speed up the procedure and reducing the need of monitoring staff. Our first-in-man study shows safety and clear benefits, such as significant pain reduction. The study indicated also time reduction in tumescent deployment. The principal investigator stated that the catheter is easy and safe to use. Our Solucio catheter combines the strength of the golden standard terminal treatment techniques with the advantage of the minimal pain and easy to use from the competitive methods. 2018, nearly 2 million patients were treated with laser worldwide. With a CAGR of 7%, another million are anticipated to be added to 2025. United States is a dominated market and it's driven by cosmetic demands. The first phase in our business plan includes a 510(k) FDA application and also building the organization both for extended business action as well for regulatory and quality control. Second stage includes FDA approval, marketing, building activities, post-marketing follow-ups, and regulatory work in Europe to be started. Exit and partnering are planned after regulatory approval. A world-class team with support from our clinical, scientific, technical, legal, and regulatory partners will deliver this plan. Recruiting process to include managing staff is ongoing. So in summary, the Solucio project includes a successful first-in-human test. We have strong IP rights. We have a short track to the US market, who is the dominated one. We have a positive extended market analysis and an exit opportunity in 3 years. Thank you very much, and I'm here for your questions.
Thank you very much, Michael. Lovely. Thank you for your nice presentation. And let's turn to our jury to listen to their questions. Jury members, Claudio has a question. Daniel has a question. Claudio, please go ahead.
So I think it was super interesting. So thanks so much. I was wondering how much training does surgeons or specialist experts require to try this new technology? And are you going to be the ones providing this training?
There is always, when you have a new technique, there is always a learning curve. In our first human test, the principal investigator saw that after 2 or 3 patients, it was quite easy to use the catheter, and he got familiar with it. And of course, we in the start, we have to train the doctors that are gonna use the technique. I love to do that.
Daniel, your turn, please.
I thank you for the fascinating description. What can you say about the founding and management team of the company besides yourselves?
The founding is ongoing right now, so we can start all the regulatory work that are in the phase 1 of the business plan. And where we are today with the team, we are 6 person in the board and operating team. And what we are looking for now is a managing director that can take over the CEO position for me, so I can be the MTO instead, the CTO instead. Sorry.
Okay.
Yes, Claudio, let's go back to you. Okay.
Yeah. There's another one. So I
Please.
was wondering if this is a definitive solution. So you have one of these problems, and you use this technique, and you get rid of, or you have some possibilities of recurrence. That is also, by my understanding, that something that happens in the treatment of this type of problem.
What we see today is that the thermal technique with laser or radio frequency is the 2 golden standard techniques, and they have the best outcome of all the different techniques. The competitive techniques have come up because there is a pain issue with the terminal techniques, and this is what we are actually solving here. The problem with the pain for the patient, and also the difficulty for the physician to put all the anesthesia in the right spot for the patient.
Nana, over to you, please.
Thank you so much. Quite interesting also application. Do you have any follow-up long-term results of your application of your technology in terms of the in terms of recovery and rehabilitation after the surgeries? Thank you.
Because we use a technique to treat like we do today, it's the only difference is that we put anesthesia in another way than we do today. We have followed up all these patients that we had in the first human test 1 year, and there is no difference between what we see in the ordinary patient today. We also follow them very closely for the first 4 weeks afterwards, and we didn't have any problems in big drawbacks.
Mm-hmm. I understood. Thank you.
Would anybody else like to go ahead with a final question for Michael? Medvask in Sweden.
I answered all your questions. Fantastic.
Exactly. You've answered those questions very nicely. Well, then we can conclude our Q&A, our discussions with Medvask and the jury. Well, it's already time for us to listen to the number 14 pitch out of our top medtechs across Europe. So here we are. And to do that, we are going to go to Germany. And we are going to now meet the co-founder and CEO of a startup called ThinkSono. Our pitcher is Fouad Alnor, and it's great to see you. Here we are. Yes, Fouad, hello. Nice to meet you.
Hello.
Very good.
Nice to meet you.
Hello. Thank you. So let's now hand over to you, Fouad, and you have 5 minutes to pitch ThinkSono.
All right, thanks very much. I'm excited to pitch. So as they said, I'm the CEO of ThinkSono, and the big aim of the company is to democratize ultrasound, which is the #1 imaging modality in medicine. And what we want to do is enable non-experts to use it. Now, the first clinical we're working on when it comes to our software is enabling the detection of deep vein thrombosis. Now, deep vein thrombosis is the #1 cause of preventable hospital death in the world. More people die from DVT-related deaths than breast cancer, AIDS, and car accidents combined. So this is a huge worldwide issue. However, the main component of DVT that is very problematic is the diagnosis. Treatment is somewhat solvable because there are treatments already available, but catching those patients before they get a pulmonary embolism is very important. And currently, diagnosis is only available via a technician or a radiologist who performs an ultrasound scan. Now, with our technology, we enable any healthcare professional to perform the scan using a handheld device and an app, as well as a dashboard. So what happens is a nurse can download our app and uses these already existing handheld devices to scan them, and they get real-time guidance to perform this DVT exam, which is the gold standard diagnostic exam. And then the data is available for a remote diagnosis by a radiologist if required. And to show you how that works in practice, here you will see a very quick video showing how the software works. You input some very basic patient information, and in a second, after the basic sort of demo patient information is put in, you will see detections of veins and arteries. So we optimize the system by putting height and weight to work out BMI, which is quite important. And then in a second, you will see detections of veins and arteries. So this is the standard places in the scan where they have to place the probe. They see a picture, and then after that, they get full-blown AI guidance to perform a DVT exam. which you'll see in a second now. And so imagine a nurse using this. The green is a vein and there is arteries. And to detect DVT, you have to compress the vein. And there we go. You see in a second the correct veins and arteries, and then it's the recommended area for compression. And then after that, it starts to compress. Well, the user starts to compress to detect DVT. In this case, there is no DVT in that patient because the compression was successful. And in a second, you'll see that entire analysis being done on the fly, on the phone, without the requirement of a specialist. It's analyzing the image, and in a second, you will see that there is no clot in that part of the patient. And that was just a brief overview of how the technology works. The main use case here is if we're able to do this and enable non-expert staff like nurses, like junior doctors, like emergency doctors to detect DVT at the point of care, we can reduce this 6 to 24-hour clinical pathway down to as little as 15 minutes. And the reason that's possible is because now the nurse can perform the scan earlier in the clinical pathway, saving loads of times and potentially avoiding needing to do a blood test such as a D-dimer blood test and then having to go to a formal ultrasound. So in terms of health economics, this is huge. And in fact, we've even published a Nature paper on this to break this down and provide the clinical evidence. In order to publish that paper, we partnered with Oxford University Hospital, Ernst Bergman Clinic. We've been funded by the Wellcome Trust, as well as partnered with hardware vendors such as Clarius. That's the picture you saw earlier. Finally, from a business perspective, we have a very simple business model. It's a SaaS-based model where we charge the hospital between $50,000 to $200,000 per year. That's based on full-blown health economics in our Nature paper. The reason we can charge them this much is because they actually end up saving money on the technology. And obviously we don't, I say managed to finish this slightly further on time, but currently we've already had IP that is granted internationally, as well as clinical trials which show high sensitivity and specificity, as well as a multi-center clinical study, which we're literally starting right now. As of this month, we will be gathering further clinical evidence for full 510K FDA approval, as well as CE marking. And that's it, I guess. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Fouad. That's an inspiring pitch indeed. Let's go straight through to the jury and to get their questions. Claudio, off you go. Please go ahead.
So it was very interesting. Thanks so much. I was wondering what happens if there is any type of misdiagnosis, if there's a problem. So do you have any estimation on this, and also potential liabilities? Have you thought about that?
Very good point. That's why clinical trials. So our negative predictive, we already have a sensitivity of above 90%, basically. So, and we have to show a negative predictive value of 99%, which is fine because compression ultrasound actually, exactly the technique we use is the same technique that the radiologist uses. So in principle, there's no difference. We're not reinventing the wheel here. We're just saying whatever the radiologist does, our AI guides a nurse to do this. And if you note, I said that the images still go up to the cloud for review, for radiology review. We call that Auto DVT version 1, and it's exactly to make sure that we don't miss any clots. And our prospective study, that's what we want to show, that there is no difference in our pathway versus the current standard of care, which is vital, obviously. But otherwise, the big thing is if we manage to do that, obviously this is a huge deal, right? Because there's no reason to do the current pathway than our one. Go ahead, sorry.
I see that, Aidan and Daniel, and then after Nana.
I'm just wondering who is going to use this and where in the patient pathway is it used? Is it in the emergency department or?
Exactly, okay. Emergency.
And how many patients would you think would come in with
2,000 to 3,000
suspected DVT per
2,000 to 3,000
100?
Yeah.
Per 100,
sorry,
though, say.
So
I'm just trying to figure why you buy a separate piece of equipment for the emergency department when you may only get 1 in 1,000 patients or something. I don't know what the percentage is.
Okay, so the number of suspected DVT scans is about 2,000 to 3,000 depending on the institution. Suspected DVT scans, right? 90+% are negative, and those are the ones we want to screen out. That's why we have the negative predictive value, if that makes sense. So the number of actual clots is low, which is the problem we're trying to solve, which is try to screen out as many of those negative cases as possible, and then only have the radiologist scan those that are much more likely to have DVT. So if a radiologist scans 2,000 per year instead, and only 100 have DVT or 200 have DVT, in our case, they only scan 300, and out of those 300, 200 actually have DVT. Does that make sense? It's a screening tool, essentially.
It does, yeah. But of patients that go into an emergency department, how many would be scanned in the first place? That
2,000 to 3,000 a year that go through the emergency department.
Okay, out
At
of
Oxford
100,000. Yeah.
Yeah, and obviously the emergency will see like hundreds of thousands.
What I'm trying to
whatever.
balance is why not have the previous model where you have a centralized ultrasound, you could detect that versus a small device which is going to be in an emergency department and used every so often.
Because the bottleneck is the radiologist, not the technology, not the devices, right? You still need that expert sonographer or radiologist to scan 2,000 to 3,000 patients per year, right? So in our case, we're saying instead of this person doing it, you can have any nurse, junior doctor, emergency doctor doing the same scan essentially, and then getting it confirmed. So it's much more essentially democratizing the ability to scan, if you want it to be that way. It's much more efficient for the emergency departments.
Thank you. Let's jump over to Danielle to ask your question. Danielle, quickly, please. Then Nana.
Yeah, mine has already been answered. Thank you.
Okay.
You've got the answer. Nana.
Yeah, thank you so much. I know the ThinkSono. I remember still your presentation in Paris 2018. Great progress, fantastic. I just would like to address the time is really meta in that case, 15 minutes. Because this is emergency situation, and in terms of the complications and the lung, emboli and this is really reduce the mortality enormously. My question is about the clinical workflow integration. You are in the German market in Potsdam in Hasse-Platte Institute, and so there is a new legislation about the hospital of the future. So it means in that case you can be reimbursed. You
Yes,
are allowed
true.
to be integrated. How is your application is integrated in the clinical workflow? Sorry. Thank you.
Short answer, please, Fouad.
We can integrate via PACS, or we can have a standalone system. It's up to the hospital, but we have zero problems with seamless integration with the IT infrastructure of the hospital. Obviously, compliance with GDPR and all the other things that you have to be compliant with, no problem.
Thank you very much, Fouad. That completes our questions and answers between the jury and ThinkSono, and indeed the 14 pitches of the top medtechs. Let's just remember the last three that we met this afternoon. We met Orixa from France. Orixa aims to bring liquid ventilation's clinical benefits to the ICUs to save critical care patients. In Sweden, we met Medvask, who has a catheter as a revolutionary disposal medical device for the application of anesthesia during the treatment of varicose veins. And finally, in Germany, ThinkSono, with the world-leading ultrasound AI company that has created the world's first software for automatic detection of DVT, deep vein thrombosis. It's a huge, massive thank you that we wish to send to all 14 startups who have pitched today. Such quality, such exciting stuff, and such inspiration. So thank you to you all. Equally, a very big thank you to the jury for those probing questions, rich discussion, and constructive observations and advice. We are now going to move into a networking session. This, of course, is the wonderful opportunity for scheduling one-to-one meetings, meeting up, catching up, planning those future meetings to come with anybody that you would like to find out more about. This will run through until 16:30. 16:30 to 16:45 is time for tea, coffee, whatever you fancy at that time of the afternoon. But we will be meeting back again at 16:45 for two important things. Our third expert insight, and of course, you all know, at 5 o'clock, the awards ceremony. So we hope to see you then, Stay tuned, stay with us, and see you later. Have a good afternoon.